I just don't know what I'm recording. Should be 5 of you. Okay. Oh, I know this is killing me. Good afternoon. My name is Darren Lowe. I am Command Master Chief, Navy Operations Support Center, Norfolk. I'm currently enrolled in Columbia College, pursuing my bachelor's degree in business management. The reason I am performing this speech today is I'm required to take speech class, which is my final class to obtain my bachelor's degree. So this is my first speech of 5 to discuss 2 strengths, 2 weaknesses, and 1 improvement of my ability as a public speaker. So I'm going to roll into discussing my strengths at first. Over the course of my 42 years of life, I've had the opportunity to hold at least 2 jobs that have afforded me the opportunity to be a public speaker. The first one I had was a driver recruiter for a truck driving company named Builders Transport. In that job, I was required to travel to various truck driving schools where I stood up in front of the class, basically a class of students, and I informed them about why my trucking company was the best one for them to come drive for. I would try to sell my company so that they would sign up and drive for my company. Similar to what we in the Navy know as recruiters. They had quotas, I had quotas, you had to try to fill a certain number of them. It was a pretty good job, but it was probably the first job that I encountered where I actually had to speak in front of publicly to strangers who I knew nothing about. So, but it has helped definitely make me a better speaker. So I attribute some of my public speaking ability to that. The second one, of course, is when I decided to be a Command Master Chief, joined the CMC SEO course. 2 weeks I spent up in Newport, Rhode Island. I got to learn to be the importance of public speaking associated with being a Command Master Chief. As a Command Master Chief, I'm responsible for a staff of 75. And in the compass of this job, I'm required to stand up at weekly quarters and speak or train to a minimum of 75 to a maximum of 200, based on some of the recent trainings that we've done, sexual assault awareness training and things like that. So those 2 jobs have afforded me to strengthen my ability as a public speaker. Now that I've discussed a couple of my strengths, as with anything, I also have a couple of weaknesses. So now we'll discuss 2 of my weaknesses as a public speaker. My first weakness as a public speaker is probably my inability to properly prepare. Being a huge procrastinator, I put stuff off to the very end. I try to stretch it out to the last minute, then it becomes crunch time. Then I'm forced to run through the gamut, to cram, to get everything prepared in order to come in to give a speech, to give the training or whatever. That I definitely got to improve upon because that's a huge weakness for me. But you know, with everybody I have a busy lifestyle, so it's difficult for me to change that. But that's one of my weaknesses. My second weakness is I have a tendency to where my brain works much faster than my mouth. Therefore, my brain gets to bouncing on multiple points, and I get to going from point to point when I'm trying to get a point across, and I have a tendency to cover many points, leaving my audience unsure of really what points I really was going to come across. So those are my 2 weaknesses. So how do I improve? Some recommendations. Now that I've discussed my weaknesses, I can come up with a couple recommendations or a recommendation for why I can do better. You know, the biggest thing is I've got to get over this procrastination gig that I'm into. You know, I must stop putting things off to the end. I must more organize myself, plan better, utilize time management better in order to meet my requirements to ensure that I'm properly prepared to give a speech or a training session. Second thing I need to do is focus on the points I want to get across and make sure that I've written them down to cover them, to actually hit on all points I want to get across. Because there's been many times that I've had the inability to get my points across because my mind bounces from point to point. So I miss some key points that I want to get across. So those are some things that I would like to do to improve my public speaking ability. So in concluding, I've talked about 2 of my strengths. I've addressed 2 of my weaknesses. The 2 strengths was my 2 jobs that I had was as a driver recruiter as well as a CMC in the Navy. My 2 weaknesses is I jump from point to point as well as I procrastinate heavily. I've come up with a solution to a recommendation to hopefully improve my process of public speaking, and going forward I can work on making sure that I get my points across. I better manage my time in order to stay on point and eliminate procrastination. So that will wrap up my speech today on public speaking. Hit that top button.